Brothers and sisters, we are blessed in countless ways. We are living here in the comfort and the safety and the freedom of Charlotte, North Carolina. We have to appreciate that our entire existence is filled with divine blessings. We are fully reliant and dependent every moment of every day on the countless favors and gifts of God upon all of us. That calls us to a way of gratitude, a way of thanks. That starts with an intention in our hearts and minds to seek out the pleasure of Allah, to seek to live a life that is fulfilling the divine will by conscious choice. That can only be done if we study His book, if we study the life of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we look to the events of our lives and what we feel and how we deal with reality, and we do it according to the knowledge of divine revelation. That is the responsibility. That is what will protect us and give us safety from the evil of ourselves, from the evil of the world around us, from all of the corruption and tyranny. It will give us strength. It will give us patience. It will give us all of the means necessary to reach peace in eternal bliss. The reality is that truth is the key to justice. You can't have justice between people if falsehood is governing their relationship. Justice is the key to peace. You can't have peace if people are in conflict. If people have a fundamental distrust and lack of comfort with each other's existence, there will be no peace. Expecting that is ridiculous. Now, peace opens the door for benevolence. Benevolence is where people can start to really care about each other. They know each other. They know each other's interests, their hopes and dreams, their struggles, their weaknesses, and then they go out of their way to help them. And that's prosperity. It's a system. The entire Quran and Sunnah is guidance to establishing that system within oneself and family and social order. The Quran says, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدَلًا. The word of your Lord is complete and made perfect through truth and justice. This message, as it is implemented in the world, has to be based upon the truth of God and the truth of the reality that we live in. And then that truth can create justice. And then people will care about each other. Even the Prophet ﷺ made very clear direction, understanding there will be people with political authority who follow him. He said, إِنَّ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَيْكُمْ حَقًّا مَا حَكَمُوا فَعَدَلُوا مَا اؤْتُمِنُوا فَأَدُّوا مَا اسْتُرْحَمُوا فَرَحِمُوا. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there are people who will have a rightful authority of governance over you. But there are conditions, 3 conditions, that proper governance according to his Islamic knowledge of the divine will. First, it starts off that they make a system of rule, that they make judgments of ruling people based upon justice. That people feel like their rights are tended to. That people feel secure and safe. مَا تُمِنُوا فَأَدُّوا. And that they feel the onus of responsibility as a governing body to take care of the interests of society as a trust, to use the resources at the hands of the governing power to fulfill the needs and responsibilities of the social order. And when people sturhimu, they seek help because they're struggling, they're in pain, they're in poverty, they're hungry, they need health care, they need all of the needs that they need, then the government feels the onus to take care of them. And they go out of their way to be compassionate and merciful with them. This is the Prophet Muhammad's model of governance. And that model of governance has books written about it by Christians and Jews who lived in Palestine. Even modern Israelis, Israeli government figures, Israeli historians have written books where they highlight that we under the Ottoman Empire, under the theocratic Islamic State, enjoyed lots of freedom. We were not interrupted in our daily affairs. We were given economic agency. We were given positions in the government. We had our religious and cultural freedom, and we were never abused or hindered from that. This is when that land was people living there under Islam. And things changed. So it's important for us today to start that first key in the door to solving this problem, which is truth. We have to establish the basic fundamental truths. For many who, for some reason, are not aware of what we're talking about, we're talking about the emergence of the concept of Zionism, which is an idea for Jews all over the world to move into the land of Palestine and establish their own Jewish state in Palestine, where Arabs have been living, Jews, Christians, Muslims, for a very long time. And so Zionism gained its full political authority in 1948. And in 1967, they took over absolute military occupation. They took away part of Egypt. They took away part of Syria. And then later they took part of southern Lebanon. So the question is, how do we bring this truth to the issue of the Palestinian rights and their liberation in the face of the Zionist occupation that they've faced for 75 years now? It starts with number one. If someone demands that you support Israel, your response is simply this: no one is to be made to follow or to support or to believe in anything that they personally do not believe in or want to support, because this is called the freedom of conscience enshrined in the First Amendment of the United States of America. So you do not have a right to demand that I support some state because you want me to. That's a disrespectful, un-American thing to ask me that. Simple. Number two, somebody says, you need to condemn Hamas. Are you condemning Hamas? And you say, this is an offensive, insulting question. I have done nothing to suggest that I support Hamas, and so you assuming that I support Hamas by demanding such a thing is disrespectful to me. The same is true if people ask you, do you condemn the killing of innocent civilians? You respond, this is a very disrespectful, insulting question, that you would somehow assume that I probably or could support the killing of innocent people. And so I don't have to answer such ridiculous questions that should not have been asked in the first place. The premise of the question is for us to feel some sort of shame or guilt for either being Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim, because these three are naturally inclined to supporting these bad things. If they press on with their question, they say, no, but I just want to know, because you had mentioned you support Palestinian rights. You can say Palestinian rights is a holistic reality. It's an occupied people's right to freedom and self-determination in governments and human rights. That is a general thing. I support that. Do I support factions and all of that? I'm not there to do that. What's going on there in all of their intricacies is peculiar to them. You say, you know what? I'm asking you, do you condemn, as an American citizen, the American support for 75 years of occupation, humiliation, forced exile, and murder that has been going on by the Israeli government with the United States government? Do you feel the need to ask Jews and Israelis to condemn all of the human rights abuses documented by the United Nations time and time again in the many resolutions that they said that these are war criminals that are going against international laws? Have you asked, and do you feel the need to ask these Jews and these Israelis to condemn such things? And if you don't, are you aware that you're being a bigot? That you're being racist? That you're picking to choose one people a certain way and another people a certain way because of an assumption that this whole group of people, Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim, are somehow violent, disposed to violence. So in fact, there were 243 Palestinians killed this year by IDF soldiers, and by settler terrorists on the watch and in front of IDF soldiers this year before this thing. Did anybody condemn that? Did they even report it? And that's the fundamental issue here. So it all starts with the truth. Western media has now proven itself unreliable in this conflict. The 40 beheaded babies story, the claims of rape, the claims of the big surprise, we had no idea this was going to happen. All three of those are big, widespread stories that have now been proven false, categorically, not by opinion and all of that. When the Israeli military was asked, did you find beheaded babies? They said no. We do not confirm that. It is in their best interest, and I would not doubt that they would lie about it, which I don't know why they wouldn't just do that, but maybe then some human rights organization wants to see in order to prove that what you're saying happened. And then you can't do that, and then that puts them in a situation. So they said, we have no evidence of that. They would be the first to say, you see, there is no evidence of anybody being raped. And one of the famous pictures that was spread around this woman raped and killed, her mother has said that she was treated in a Gaza hospital and that she's safe and fine, and she has communicated to us. But the story went out. The story that they had no idea. This is a big breakdown in intelligence. The Egyptian government has openly said, and the United States Foreign Affairs Department representative has said, we were given intelligence 3 days before this happened that something like this was going to happen. So now, the Zionist propaganda machine has failed on a massive level. It's important to highlight how Western media has completely undermined its own credibility in broad daylight, to an extent that now we can't really rely upon anything that they are reporting. The entire foundation of Zionism is built upon erasing and distorting Palestinian history. Just like the whole debates right now with CRT, we don't want to talk about American history with Native Americans and the black community and the slavery and all of that. They have institutionally made sure that the world would not know about Palestinian history and what Palestinians lived through for the last 75 years. We're seeing this in real time. The attack that happened last week is a reaction. It's a response. Expecting a besieged, occupied, brutalized, colonized people to remain calm and peaceful for 75 years under brutal oppression, and specifically 16 years living in a giant open-air prison, as is defined by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, the well-known Israeli human rights organization. They say they're living in an open-air prison. They do not have freedom to move on land, sea, or air. They do not get clean water. They have periodic electricity breaks before this. They are completely cut off from the world, and they are living in a very terrible situation by the Israeli occupying siege over them. And then you have these Arab regimes looking for their future post-oil economic interests, forming normalized relation with the oppressor. So of course these people are feeling desperation. For the Western media to act like this is some just random terrorist attack of crazy Muslims attacking Jews because they're anti-Semites or whatever is ridiculous. But the only way they're able to do that is because the 423 Palestinians who've been killed this year by IDF soldiers and terrorist militias of settlers in the West Bank, this lack of reporting makes it easy to convince all of the people who have no idea about those things that this just happened out of nowhere. And so then who are the aggressors? Somehow the Palestinians. It's laughable. Shireen Abu Akleh, it has now been established by the Israeli admission that one of their soldiers sniped an American citizen journalist with the giant press bulletproof vest in her head. And it's been proven that there were no other fighting things happening anywhere near her. So the FBI sent out, we would like to investigate. And the Israeli department said, you will not investigate. And that was it. We've heard nothing else. The American citizen that was killed on with our tax dollars. And so a lot of people are saying, well, what happened? Where's there Martin Luther King Jr.? What about the peaceful resistance thing? Well, Martin Luther King Jr. had the luxury of resisting in a country that has a constitution that says everybody should be treated equal. But their constitution has a Jewish supremacist, Jewish state authority, and that makes people who are not Jew not having the same rights as a Jew. But even then they did it. It's called the Great March of Return, 2018, 2019. All of the modern, young, hip, tech-savvy people said, Hamas, step aside. We're going to record ourselves going to the fences in the tens of thousands, and we're going to protest and symbolically throw rocks at this giant fence and wall. What happened? Israeli Defense Forces soldiers sniped and killed 150 people and injured 10,000 some odd people, many of them medics, journalists, very clearly defined. It's a sniper. With a sniper you can see, that's press, that's medical. But they shot them anyways. And so they documented all this. You can go look at it. It's hundreds of videos of the peaceful protest trying to appease the American request for the Martin Luther King Jr. style resistance. And that's what happened. And then guess what happened after that? Nobody cares, continually. So if, say, they destroyed Hamas, guess what will happen? A new group like Hamas will come out of what you are doing to these people. And so we have to see that this is not a solution. So we ask Allah to be with us, to give us strength, to give us courage, to give us wisdom, and to be with our brothers and sisters in Palestine. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The Prophet ﷺ taught us about the beautiful, noble concept of jihad. He said, أفضل الجهاد كلمة عدل عند سلطان جائر. The best form of the struggle for truth over falsehood, for justice over oppression, for righteousness over corruption, is that someone would speak a word of truth and justice in the face of a tyrant, of a corrupt ruler. This is our role. We live in a country where when people's opinions changed, when the broad majority took a different attitude than they had about a certain subject before, there have been some massive changes in the legal system of America. You guys, many of you have witnessed it. When people got together and they educated people and they brought the truth to light, then things changed. It was very well known in the 1970s and early 80s that the United States government was supporting the apartheid rule over Africa, South Africa. And Nelson Mandela was designated by the United States government as a terrorist back then. Until people's perceptions changed and they said no, and they went and they stood up for these people. So right now, the United States government is complicit in supporting war crimes against the Palestinian people. And they are doing this in broad daylight. They were asked in the press briefing, are you going to condemn and tell Israel you are wrong for this siege and blockade of saying openly that you will stop all food and electricity and medicine and clean water from going into all of the civilians here, which is an act of war crime against civilian population. You know how we know this? Because Russia recently did this in Ukraine and everybody agreed, including America and EU and everybody else, that that is a war crime. The exact same thing. The exact same practice. And so we have to hold our government accountable that you are supporting the killing of women and children and men who have nothing to do with any combat or any attack on any civilian life. And this is a war crime. They're saying now that it's over 1,700 people who've been killed, martyrs in Gaza. And they said over 300 children and over 300 women by these jets who get the support of our tax dollars. 350,000 plus people are completely displaced. They have no home. They're just out and there's no electricity. There's very little food. They're living in the worst circumstances possible. And they keep the mantra, Israel has the right to defend itself. Against these, that this is the defense, we don't accept that. They said they have 24 hours to evacuate 1 million people, and guess what? We already destroyed all the roads. There are no roads to drive on. All your cars are destroyed anyways. We've been bombarding you. It was said that they've used more missiles on Gaza in the last 48 hours than they did on Afghanistan in the entire last year of their so-called war over there. This is bonkers. We have to be educated. We have to educate ourselves, our families, our neighbors, our friends, and our colleagues. We have to hold our government accountable. We have to send messages and call our elected representatives and stick to the very simple facts that right now you are supporting a war crime against humanity. You are supporting the death and destruction of innocent civilian children and women in Gaza. You must stop this if you are to claim your moral ground as America. Otherwise, just say, we're a new country and now we're part of this new thing where we support tyranny and war crimes. Just be clear with it and let everybody know you're a different kind of country now. But if you're going to maintain that you're still America, that you said Trump was a big threat to, and we needed Biden to stop this kind of disgracing American values, well, Biden came in and he's doing the same kind of stuff now. Worse. And so it's crucial for us to make this point to people. The solution is very simple. Somebody says, well, what are we going to do? When you solve a problem, you look at what is causing the problem. So if you keep solving a symptom of the problem is going to keep coming back up. The problem is the 75-year-long military occupation of the Israeli Jewish supremacist government over the Palestinian people, and negating for them the basic human rights which are enshrined in the international laws that they claim they're a democracy. This is not a democracy. And so we have to make that point crystal clear. If you think getting rid of Hamas is the problem, you're not paying attention. Getting rid of the occupation is the problem. Giving people their rights back, their freedom, their dignity, that is going to solve this problem. And then people can learn to have peace. We all need to truly stand for courage. We cannot be cowards. We cannot be worried about losing our jobs or losing our immigration status. Because on the day of judgment, Allah will ask you, what did you do when you could have done something? Why didn't you just put a Free Palestine sign in your yard? I've had one there for years in my yard. Get you a hat, get you a shirt, get you a pen. Free Palestine. Talk to your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends. We want to free Palestine. From what? From military occupation and humiliation and abuse for 75 years. We're asking for that. But what about? No, that's all the rest of the stuff you're concerned about is a symptom of that. Simple as could possibly be. We have to stick to this narrative. And if we do, and we talk to many people, we have seen in this country massive changes. And they try to save face. They just act like we weren't with South Africa before. They act like, well, we had to do something in Vietnam, but what? Well, we don't know. Because turned out that it was of no use. There was no need to go to Vietnam. All of those Vietnamese, tens of thousands, all of those American soldiers died for nothing, right? Everybody now knows that. Everybody's at record. But it took all that death. We're saying don't let any more death take place. Don't support violence. If you say we need to send money to Israel, you're saying we need to kill more innocent Palestinians. That's what you're saying. Are you agreeing? Are you the violent one or am I the violent one here? I'm not saying be violent against Israel, anybody. You are. You're saying send military tax dollars from our pockets so that those people can commit war crimes, as they have been doing for 75 years, as the world has documented in the UN resolution lists, which were all vetoed by the United States of America. Just stick to the simplicity of it.